In order for that to happen, there must have been some kind of stoppage of time or movement in time. They brought her back to the moment, but she had this mark. It was January 1st, 1970, Largo, California. Lisa Donovan, a pseudonym, then still very young, recalled how she and her family and a friend who tagged along were outside their family home one evening. It was around 8 o'clock. She claims that they had just been eating at Morrison's Cafe, a restaurant nearby, and were climbing out of the car when something strange was seen to descend from the sky, coming to a spot directly over their home. All their eyes were drawn to it, but it was Lisa's father who ordered everyone to run. Everyone did as told, dispersing in all directions, except Lisa, who stood still, watching the object as it drew nearer and nearer to where she was standing. She described it as, quote, huge, glowing white with blue and amber lights flashing. There was a beam of light emanating from the craft which she noted was, quote, radiant and, quote, brilliant white. As she stood looking up, she claimed something else more bizarre began to play out. A voice suddenly appeared in her head. She did not hear it with her ears, rather it was inside her head and she could understand it clearly. It told her to stay, to not move, and she didn't. She remained there standing beside the house foundation and garage, looking up. Around her, her family members and her school friend were nowhere to be seen. Lisa stared into the light. It kept projecting a double triangle with 3 circles and a line running through them, she recalled. It was quite cold that evening, but she remembered that she could feel the heat coming from the object as it hovered. It warmed her. When first observed, the object, from what she could tell, was, quote, dancing in the sky, going up and down, swishing side by side in a lightning speed before hovering and projecting a beam. Suddenly, Lisa noticed that there was another person. She thought it was her friend. Lisa turned around and observed someone, or rather something, standing behind her. I saw what I thought was my friend, but it was only about 3.5 feet tall, she noted. Further, whatever this thing was, it wasn't human. It had big, black, buggy-looking eyes, was off-white in flesh color, naked, tiny nose, and a slit in mouth. Lisa and the creature stared at each other. She could hear it speaking to her in her mind. At the time, she admitted she was so young that she did not know what this form of communication was called. She would later discover that it was called telepathy. She learned this from 2 military men who spoke to her after the experience. More on this later. The voice said that he would be back. Despite the creature looking hideous, she noted that at no point did she feel afraid. In fact, she even attempted to touch it. I tried to reach out to touch him, but he disappeared in the beam of light. When the encounter first happened, Lisa noticed that it was completely silent, as if all sound had vanished. It was as if the normal sound of nature had been turned off. It only returned when the beam was retracted and the object took off. The beam retracted into the triangle-like cylinder. It immediately zoomed towards the Gulf of Mexico in a flash, she recalled. Sometime later that evening, Lisa noticed that her watch that she had gotten for Christmas a few days earlier no longer worked. I had a Cinderella watch my uncle gave me. That event caused the time to stop and the watch to completely quit working, and I just got it as a Christmas present. It was a Timex Cinderella wind-up. The time stuck on it was 8:11 p.m. Lisa's father, a military man, immediately insisted that the family not talk of what had happened. My dad told me, "Tell no one or the government will be all over you." My dad recognized them as he was in U.S. Navy. He told me it was a UFO. So many of these reports involve, and I've read this from other researchers too, that have noticed this, that people who encounter these UFOs and ETs and stuff when they're young,
typically their family, or somebody in their family, their father, uncle, grandfather, somebody is involved in the military in some way. I could just be a numbers thing, like where there's, every person knows somebody in the military. But it seems like, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of people have some connection to the military, and typically it's somebody higher up that has, their child has an encounter or something.
Lisa found what her father told her strange, but it would only get more bizarre when, a few days later, she was confronted by two men identifying themselves as United States Air Force military personnel. This happened after school. They wanted to speak to her about what she had observed on the evening of January 1st. I didn't tell anyone, she noted. This is why it bothered her that these two men would be there asking her about her experience. How did they find out, she wondered. As far as Lisa knew, nobody in her family or her friend that was there that evening had spoken a word about it to anyone. Curiously, Lisa claims that she continued to encounter these two agents over the years.
John Keel would often talk about how these MIBs, and Nick Redfern, and basically anyone who looked into the Men in Black topic, Jenny Randall's, these men would always identify themselves as being with some organization that would give them authority. Not always, but in many cases. She said that after the initial encounter with these two individuals that identified themselves as with the United States Air Force, that she continued to have contact with these two men. And it's not typical of most of these types of reports.
Lisa claims that as she grew into adulthood, she continued to see strange objects, lights, from time to time, and even began referring to them as, quote, star people. In 2019, Lisa reached out to the Mutual UFO Network about her case, and even offered to provide them with some drawings she had made as a little girl, all the way back in 1970, though she admitted that they were buried somewhere in her attic. She drew not only the craft, but the creatures she had observed that night. She continues to carry a scar which she believes manifested the night of the encounter. I still have a triangle mark on my right wrist from the event.
I would have liked for her to have gone more into detail about these other encounters she had later on in life. She said she saw objects and stuff like that, but it sounds like she became accustomed to it. There was a point in the report, and I didn't mention this, but she said that her last sighting was like quite a while ago, and that she was probably overdue for another, sighting. And I don't know. It sounds like she had been seeing them quite regularly, over the years. And a lot of people who have encounters with ETs will see these objects from time to time, almost as if they're checking in on them.
What exactly was the point of this encounter? Did the UFO specifically seek out Lisa, or was it random? Did the entity really appear on the ground just to tell her that he would be back? Or did something else transpire that Lisa could not recall? Did it relay more information to her than she was allowed to consciously remember? Was it preparing her for some future encounter or imparting some knowledge that she would keep buried but would prove important to her at some later date? She does not suggest that there was any missing time, only that her watch had stopped, presumably at the moment she found herself standing under the object, or possibly when the creature appeared to her. Personally, I suspect that there was more to the story, seemingly confirmed by the continued appearance of the United States Air Force officials in Lisa's life. Clearly something else was occurring beyond just the occasional sighting of crafts, something these military men, if that's what they really are, were very interested in keeping tabs on. Another detail that suggests more might have transpired was the appearance of the triangle mark on her wrist. In the end, what does it all mean? if anything?
When I first read this report, I thought, it sounds like something else happened that night, but she doesn't indicate that there is any missing time. So that's what kind of threw me off. But she said that her watch stopped at 8:11, which is around the time that this object appeared. And it sounds like something happened, and she might have just remembered the tail end of it, where this entity told her, hey, we're going to come back. It sounds like, even though there was no missing time, nobody in the family noticed that, hey, that it's an hour later. It does sound like something else happened, and in order for that to happen, there must have been some kind of stoppage of time or movement in time. They brought her back to the moment, but she had this mark. She said there was this, Oz effect type thing where there was no sound. It just sounds like something else happened when the object appeared over top of her and the being appeared. I don't think it was just the being appeared and then just told her, hey, we're going to come back, and then took off. I think that something else more substantial probably happened, which would explain the mark. There's no time there for her to receive a mark on her wrist or whatever. So I don't know. It just seems like more happened, even though she doesn't recall it, and no one points out that there's any missing time. So it makes me wonder: did these beings somehow stop time, take her, bring her back to that moment, or move her backwards in time to that moment, and then just place her back on the ground? And what she recalled was actually like the tail end of an encounter.